I like neurotic people. I'm neurotic myself, and I like neurotic
Everyone
people.
is, I think, to a degree.
Well, that's exactly what I think. You see,
Everyone
I think it's universal. I think it's universal. Neurotic is one of those fashionable words that to some people means crazy. What it means is that everybody is troubled. Everybody has problems. And they're problems of circumstance, and they're problems that start when you're young and you're growing up, and they're professional problems, and they're personal problems. Nobody goes through life unscathed. And I think if you write about those things, you're going to touch people.
When I get famous, I'll be free on my own. You wait and see.
Well, no one can predict the future of the theater, the American musical theater. One thing is very certain. Talented men such as our guest today are going to be making very important changes from time to time. Mr. Stephen Sondheim.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Stephen Sondheim. Someone who's made the musical what it is today, Stephen Sondheim.
Please welcome Stephen Sondheim.
Here is Stephen Sondheim.
He is often called the father of the modern American musical. He earned the title by experimenting with form and content. He earned it by asking audiences not to sit back and relax, but to sit up and take notice.
Not that Sondheim suits everyone's taste. If you don't know the name Stephen Sondheim, you know his words and music.
Musical lyrics, Stephen Sondheim.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Sondheim.
I mean, an awful lot of people have gone historically to musicals to forget their troubles. Come on, get happy. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in making people unhappy, but I'm not interested in not looking at life, because I don't know why I want to write it otherwise.
I have no idea where the music came from. My father used to pick out tunes, Broadway tunes, on the piano. And when I was a kid, he would put my hand on his fingers so I would sort of feel like I was playing the piano. And then I took piano lessons when I was 7 years old, which is what every nice Jewish boy did in the West Side for 2 years. And my mother was very visual, and she was a very talented designer. And I have no visual talent whatsoever. So there goes the entire theory of genes. The Stephen and the Joshua were chosen by my parents out of the Bible. They didn't know what to name me, so they just flipped the pages open and put their fingers in, and it came out Stephen Joshua. In fact, I was known as Josh until I was about 10 or 11 years old. I always thought I was born at 3:30 in the morning because my mother told me that. She wanted me to feel that I had kept her awake and made the birth as difficult as possible. I found out from my father I was born at 9 in the evening, and it was not a difficult birth at all. That disagreement was sort of typical of them and ended in a divorce 10 years after I was born. My mother got custody of me and bought a house in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. There was a kind of myth that if your family broke up, what you needed was discipline. So you were sent to military school. The surprise.
Did you need discipline?
I don't think so, but I loved it. Everything was so chaotic at home that to be told to be at a certain place at 9:12 and another place at 9:37 and to have to go on parade and that sort of thing. Again, I was 10 and 11 years old. We had little wooden rifles, but it was called New York Military Academy, and I thrived. I thought it was terrific. My father was a dress manufacturer, and he was certainly the most liked man in the industry, but not the most successful. And they go together, I think. His second marriage was very successful. He married a very nice lady. And so I liked my stepmother and my father very much. He loved the theater, so when he had his visiting privileges with me, the court-appointed visiting privileges, he would take me to musicals. I was an only child, and both my parents were working parents, so because I had no sort of childhood companion, and my mother was a celebrity hunter, she knew slightly the Oscar Hammersteins, and they lived about 3 miles away. So she sort of foisted me on them because they had a son my own age, actually a year younger, Jimmy Hammerstein. And as a result, I sort of osmosed myself into the Hammerstein household, and Dorothy and Oscar Hammerstein became my surrogate parents during my teen years.
And that's essentially how I became a songwriter, because I wanted to do what Oscar did.
You know, I've often said that if he'd been an archaeologist, I would have been an archaeologist. Maybe I wouldn't have had the talent for archaeology, and luckily he was in a profession that obviously I have gifts for, so it worked out very nicely. But it was essentially imitating him. I majored in music at college, and I always wanted to write music and lyrics. And the first show I wrote that was scheduled for production was called Saturday Night. But the producer died, and the show didn't get on. And I was then asked to do just the lyrics for West Side Story. I was 25 years old at the time. I'd been writing music up until then. I didn't want to write just lyrics, but Oscar said that it would be a very good experience for me, even though I'd be frustrated not writing music, because I'd be dealing with people with enormous talent and ability. That's Leonard Bernstein and Jerry Robbins and Arthur Lawrence. And I would learn a great deal through practical experience, and I should not worry about the time lost to not writing music. And he was right.
Could be, who knows? There's something due any day. I will know right away, soon as it shows. It'd make 'em cannonballing down to the sky, gleaming its eye, bright as a rose. Who knows?
Well, there's the true nostalgia. Lenny and I wrote Something's Coming essentially in one day, which was one of the most exciting days of my life. And we finished it about 11 o'clock in the evening, and we woke Felicia, Mrs. Bernstein, up, got her out of bed, and played it for her, and she sleepily said it's wonderful and went back to bed, having not, I don't think, heard the number, poor thing. But we had to share the excitement, and tonight I got it all over again. I mean, it's a song I dearly love.
We wrote it during rehearsals because the boy playing Tony, named Larry Kirk, wasn't registering in his first scene with the kind of weight that made you want to follow his adventures through the show. And I suggested that we write a song that has real drive to it. A paradigmatic one would be Hallelujah, Hallelujah, the kind of thing that Judy Garland made her reputation from. A driving, fast beat song.
The Lord is waiting to take your hand. Shout hallelujah, come on, get happy.
And that's exactly what we did. And Larry did it on opening night in Washington and stopped the show.
It's only just out of reach down the block.
He had the audience in the palm of his hand, and it gave him confidence. It was his first major musical. Of all the people in the cast, he had to be the one to carry that strength forward. And that number gave him that strength.
Could it be? Yes, it could. Something's coming, something good. If I can wait, something's coming. I don't know what it is, but it is gonna be great.
What surprised me about it, and still does, is all the baseball terminology comes out of, one-handed catch, all that sort of thing. Somehow I got the image of Tony as a ball player. I don't mean specifically, it's just the words kept. Those were the images that occurred to me, and they're the right images. Cannonballing down through the sky. All that stuff about forward motion. And I know what it was echoing Tony's desire to move forward, to get away from his gang life, and he knows there's something around the corner that's going to make his life perfect, and you just, and it's a baseball.
Catch the moon, one-handed catch, around the corner, or whistling down the river. Come on, deliver to me. Will it be? Yes, it will. Maybe just by holding still, it'll be there. Come on, something, come on in. Don't be shy, meet a guy, pull up a chair. The air is humming, and something great is coming. Who knows? It's only just out of reach, down the block on a beach, maybe tonight.
Mr. Robbins, James, how does it feel now that the opening night is over?
Well, we're all very tired and also very happy.
The opening reviews in Washington mentioned everybody connected with the show. They were all raves, except me. I was obviously disappointed and chagrined, my first professional show. And so on the morning after, I was riding from the theater back to the hotel with Lenny, and he said, look, the lyrics are yours. I'm perfectly happy to take my name off the lyrics. And I said, oh, that's really nice of you, thank you. And he said, of course, we'll adjust the royalties. And I said, oh, who cares about the money? It's just the credit. If somebody had only put a gag in my mouth at that point, I would have made a lot more money over the years. But the fact is, we all thought the show was just going to be sort of a prestigious show. Nobody dreamed that it would be a hit. And in fact, it wasn't a hit.
The movie was a gigantic hit. The show was not. The show was disliked by most people. The score was particularly disliked, particularly in the papers and by the public, all of whom said they couldn't hum it. It was all very exciting, but they couldn't hum anything. And 4 years later, there were only 2 single records made from West Side Story in a period of 4 years. One by Johnny Mathis and one by Dinah Shore. Johnny Mathis sang Maria, Dinah Shore sang Tonight, and that was it, because everybody said, yes, it's very exciting theatrically, but you can't hum those tunes. And then the movie came out, and of course, the movie company put $1 million or so, or maybe more, into the advertising of the movie, and they started making the disc jockeys, or getting the disc jockeys to play the tunes, and suddenly everybody could hum them. Which is why the word hummable about songs drives me up the wall.
I expected after West Side that a lot of new young people would come in and take the next step, and the next step, the next step, and by now we'd have had something that we could call the equivalent of opera, American opera, and we don't, with the solitary exception of Steve Sondheim, who does take a step with every show he does.
Well, now we're leaving the music of Mr. Bernstein and going to discuss Mr. Sondheim as the composer, not just the lyricist. From now on, that's going to be the setup, is it not?
Well, there's always possibly an exception, but I intend from now on to write my own music because it's about 3 times as much fun as writing lyrics. But there may always come along something that's just so wildly exciting that I can't keep my hands off it.
Here she is, boys! Here she is, world! Here's Rose! Curtain up! Light the light! Play it, boys! You either got it, or you ain't. And boys, I got it.
I was supposed to do music and lyrics for Gypsy, and David Merrick and Leland Hayward, who were producing it, it's okay with them, okay with Arthur Lawrence. And Ethel Merman had just been burned by 2 young writers, that is to say, she had had a flop and blamed it on the inexperience or having 2 young writers, a show called Happy Hunting. So she was very wary of taking a chance on another one. So she said no, and then Arthur and Oscar again. Oscar said, it'll frustrate you even more, but now you have a chance to write for a specific personality, and that's something you should learn to do. And he was right. That was also very valuable, because we wrote that show not for Madame Rose, but for Ethel Merman as Madame Rose, because she and David Merrick came up with the idea together to buy Gypsy Rose Lee's book, and so she came with the package.
Usually I just write, and then we cast it. But in this case, we were writing for a very specific lady to take advantage of her strengths and to minimize her weaknesses. And so it was a good experience, but it unfortunately taped me as a lyric writer, which I knew it would. So the minute I started writing music, I was treated by critics and public and the old pros, and still am, as a sort of upstart. How dare I? Why aren't I satisfied just writing lyrics, and I can't write music, so what, you know. If I'd started out as a musician and come to lyrics, they would have said the same thing.
One of my favorite Ethel Merman stories, it's apocryphal, it's been attributed to other people, but I like to believe it's true of Ethel because it is profoundly true of Ethel, is the time that she went on the Loretta Young show. Loretta Young was a lady with a capital L who had a half-hour show. She was Catholic, and she did not like swearing on her set. And Ethel had the mouth of a truck driver. So when Ethel came in for rehearsals, it wasn't long before she said, "Where's the damn prop?" And Loretta came over to her and said, "Ethel, I really don't approve of swearing, and anytime anybody swears on my set, I charge them a quarter. So Ethel gave her a quarter. And a few minutes later, of course, Ethel was annoyed at something else, and she said, "God damn it." And Loretta said, "Ethel, a quarter, please." Ethel dutifully gave it again. And a few minutes after that, of course, Ethel said, "For Christ's sake." And Loretta Young came over and said, "Ethel," and before she could finish the sentence, Ethel said, "Loretta, here's $10 and go fuck yourself." The songs I write don't really reflect me in any conscious way. I mean, they all are about the characters that the book writer has made, and I'm getting into those characters. I never think of it in my own terms at all, no.
I get to know the style, the way they think, the way they speak, and I get inside them almost as if I were an actor playing the part, and then I write. But I always take from a book writer. I couldn't invent those people. Often what attracts me to material in the first place is that I find some way of projecting myself. Like all writing, you know, there's no difference. Part of the author is always in what he writes, and part of it is a work of imagination.
As soon as you write anything, obviously it must touch on something. It's that thing that Faulkner said about observation, imagination, and experience. You can do without one of them, but you can't do without two. And writers and actors observe. It's true that in every character you write, a part of you is there somewhere. That's true of every author. But there's only been one autobiographical song I've ever written, and that was Opening Doors and Merrily We Roll Along. It's about two writers trying to bust their way into show business and their best friend. It's about me and Hal Prince. It's about Mary Rogers, and it's about Sheldon Harnick. It's about Jerry Bach. It's about all of us in the 50s knocking on the doors of producers and trying to get heard. I was trying to recapture what I was like when I was 25 and 30 years old. The show goes backwards in time and ends up in the early 60s, late 50s, and I wanted to write songs that they would have written in those days without making a comment on them. You try to write what you were like when you were 25 years old, you're going to have a lot of trouble, and I did.
It turned out pretty well.
Yeah, it turned out great.
How's it going?
Good, you?
Fair.
Yeah, tell me.
Chinese laundry.
Hi.
Mary, say hello.
I think I got a job.
Where?
True Romances.
Posing?
Thank you. Writing captions.
What about the book?
What about the book?
Nothing. Are you working on the book?
Yes.
Good.
No.
Mary.
Right, I know. Yes, me and Balzac.
I finished the one act.
I got an audition.
I started the story.
A rehearsal pianist.
So, where are we eating?
I'm moving to Playboy.
The publisher called me.
I'm doing a rewrite.
My parents are coming.
I saw My Fair Lady.
I rewrote the rewrite.
I sort of enjoyed it.
I threw out the story.
I'm meeting an agent.
We'll
all get together on Sunday. We're opening doors, singing. Here we are. We're filling up days on a dime. Got faraway shores, looking not too far. We're following every star. There's not enough time.
I called a producer.
I sent off the one act.
I started the story.
He said to come see him.
I dropped out of college.
I met this musician.
I'm playing a nightclub.
They're doing my one act.
I'm working for a Red Bull.
I rewrote the ballad.
I finished the story.
We started rehearsals.
I threw out the story, and then the musician. I'm moving to popular science.
We're opening doors, singing. Look who's here, beginning to sail on a dime. That faraway shores, getting very near. We haven't a thing to fear. We haven't got time.
In a sense, your fascination with puzzles, you can't help but wonder about whether that's in any way analogous to putting together a show.
Oh, it is very much, sure. Well, I think that's what art is, anyway. I mean, after all, puzzle is, like art, is making order out of chaos. You know, let's take a jigsaw puzzle, right? It's chaos, put together, it's a picture. And I think art is the same way on a slightly higher level.
When I moved in my first apartment in Manhattan, I didn't have enough money to buy prints and put them on the walls, but a girl I knew gave me an early 19th century game, a weird one called The New and Fashionable Game of the Jew. It was a dice-throwing, chip-betting game that taught kids to be anti-Semitic, and it was a hateful game, but it was really pretty to look at, and she had it framed for me. And I went to the store where she'd bought it. It was a rare bookstore, and the owner had a lot of 19th century games. And I bought a lot of them because they only cost $2 and $3 a piece. And that's what started my game collection. It's a curious and perverted ability to be able to see a word as a collection of letters instead of as having a meaning or a sound. For example, you love puns. So obviously the sound of words is something you're very into, and you're very quick and good at puns. And of course, the precision of your language. You just don't see words as collections of letters. I passed under this, when Cinerama first was invented, I passed under the sign that was being erected on Broadway. It said Cinerama, and I immediately thought American. Didn't have to think about it.
Wait a minute, Cinerama.
And American are anagrams of each other. Actually, it was Oscar Hammerstein who got me interested in words and crossword puzzles and anagrams. He played anagrams at his house, and he did the Puns and Anagrams puzzle in the New York Times. As a matter of fact, he encouraged me to send a puzzle into the Times when I was about 13. And I did, and it was rejected very nicely by them with a letter that said that they admired my perspicacity. And I had to look the word up to find out what it meant.
What is that?
It's priest. Have a little priest.
Is it really good?
Sir, it's too good, at least. Then again, they don't commit sins of the flesh. So it's pretty fresh.
Awful lot of fat.
Only where it's sat.
Haven't you got poet or something like that?
No, you see, the trouble with poet is, how do you know it's deceased? Try the priest.
Heavenly!
I still get pleasure out of writing a musical phrase that I think is really good. I still get a pleasure out of writing a line that I think really encapsulates what I want to say.
And you know instantly when it's right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When it's right for me, absolutely. There's that first moment, you know, the first flush, the falling in love. And then you got to let it cook and see if you're still in love in the morning, because it's a form of showing off. But it's also a form of sharing. You want to say, hey, I caught this moment with people. But it's a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful feeling. It's what everybody who writes or paints or composes feels, or else they wouldn't go on with it. If you didn't get those moments, you couldn't put up with the rest of it, the loneliness and the tedium and the endless amounts of work, you know, the sweat. I love inventing. The hard part is the execution, obviously. But even that's fun, the working out. When I say fun, of course, I'm talking about agonizing fun. I'm not talking about pleasant fun. To make art sound effortless takes a lot of effort.
And another thing, Dick. If you and Larry don't fix up the opening for that second act by tomorrow...
Mr. Morley. This is Miss Merrill, the feature writer of the United Syndicate. Mr. Hart.
How do you do?
Mr. Rogers.
How do you do? How do you do?
She'd like to do a story with you.
Gentlemen, you're about to be interviewed.
Wait till I fix my tie.
Don't you like being interviewed?
Well, I don't mind, as long as you don't ask us which we write first, the words or the music.
The question asked of most songwriters is, which comes first, the music or the lyrics? And most people think it's a dumb question. It isn't. It's just very hard to answer. And it varies from writer to writer. When I have written with Leonard Bernstein or Julie Stein, sometimes the music came first, sometimes the lyrics. In the case of Julie, mostly the lyric. In the case of Lenny, mostly we wrote together. But when I write with myself, I do what Cole Porter did. I found by going through his papers at the Library of Congress that he would take his title line, like it was just one of those things, and he would write it out rhythmically. It was just one of those things. On music paper, but with no notes attached, only the rhythm. And from that, he would extrapolate the melody. The inflection of the title would give him the rise and fall of the melody, and the rhythm of the title would give him the rhythm of the melody.
It was just one of those things, just one of those crazy flings, one of those bells that now and then rings, just one of those things.
Once I get a scene, I sometimes will put the scene on the easel of the piano. and just improvise at the piano, just reading the dialogue. Other times I will scour the dialogue for useful phrases that might be refrain lines or central ideas.
I strictly lie down.
How can you write lying down?
Because it's easy to fall asleep. Actually, I do that less than I used to, but I got in the habit of doing it. No, one of the reasons I have bad posture is for many, many years of hunched over piano and lying down with a pad propped on my knees. I work entirely with blackwing pencils for a number of reasons. One is it's very soft lead and therefore wears down very quickly, so you can spend a lot of time resharpening, which is a lot easier and more fun than writing. I've often used alcohol as a help in writing. It's very good for loosening up the inhibitions, as long as you don't drink too much. And in fact, the only thing I've ever written that's just on water was the score for a movie called Stavisky, and I realized it was because I didn't have to write lyrics.
There are so few words in a lyric that each 3 or 4 words is the equivalent of a scene in a play or a chapter in a novel. And unless every word is right, it stands out like a sore thumb and becomes much bigger than you had intended it. And it's very hard, because of the limitations of the language and the restrictions of what music does to words, to come out with a lyric that is consistently good from beginning to end.
It's a very short road from the pinch and the punch to the punch and the pouch and the pension.
I'm trying to imagine what it is to be able to sit down and write. It's a very short road from the pinch and the punch to the punch and the pouch and the pension. Does it make you laugh?
Yeah, once I got the idea of that song, well, it's true of all the songs I write, particularly when they're very verbal songs. You make lists is what you do. And you start getting into the character. It's always about getting into the character. And you start to make lists of what she would talk about. And you suddenly find that certain words either, if they don't rhyme with each other, relate to each other. And things concatenate. It's very much about serendipity. It's a very much, oh, I didn't think. Pinch, paunch. Pension. Once you get the idea of, let's say, jowls, and you think of pouch, you say, wait a minute, those, you know, that maybe we can make something out of the similarity of those sounds.
I've never heard an audience laugh as much and as loud and as long as they do at his lyrics in this show.
Audiences don't listen to lyrics, incidentally, very much.
I think they do it because they love.
Because they have so much to take in. You have to take in music and lyrics
You
and
mean
a
if they
situation.
don't hear your
and a
lyrics,
voice.
you have to blame it on Mr. Montresor and Mr. Rogers?
No, I don't blame
I think
it on
we'd argue
anybody.
with you.
I
Seriously.
think they don't listen 9 times out of 10 for the right reason. The song starts and it says, when you took my hand, and they say, yes, you took my hand, we fell in love, all right, let's get through this song. But Steve's lyrics always have a development of what has been said in the scene. They always carry it further. They're always written in the diction of the character. I mean, not only funny, I think it's easier to be clever than it is to carry a character further. And I think he's the only one who can do it today.
As a writer, I think what I am is an actor. I'm an actor when I'm writing songs. And it's one of my strengths as a writer. And one of the reasons that actors and singers like to sing my stuff. It's not only the inside of the librettist and me working together, but the fact is I write conversational songs. And so that the actors find that the rise and fall of the tune and the harmonies and particularly the rhythms help them as singers to act the song. They don't have to act against it.
I thought you loved Clara.
I did love Clara. I did. But no one has ever loved me as deeply as you. No one has truly loved me as you have, Fosca. Love without reason, love without mercy, love without pride or shame. Love unconcerned with being returned. No wisdom, no judgment, no caution, no blame. No one has ever known me as clearly as you. No one has ever shown me what love could be like until now. Not pretty or safe or easy, but more than I ever knew. love within reason, that isn't love. And I've learned that from you.
Making lyrics feel natural, sit on music in such a way that you don't feel the effort of the author. And so they shine and bubble and rise and fall is very, 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 very hard to do. And whereas you can sit at the piano and just do that and feel you're making art.
My piano technique is moderate. I have a very good right hand and a very lumpy left hand. I'm very right-handed.
A lumpy left hand?
Oh, yes, good for that sort of stuff. But the right hand is very flashy. If you write at the piano, you tend, first of all, your muscle memory tends to make your fingers fall into the same chords. And secondly, if you have a bad left hand, it's going to show up in the music. So I try to write away from the piano as much as possible.
Do you always have music playing in your head?
When I'm writing, yeah. Yeah, always.
For the entire
Yes, and when it turns out to be somebody else's tune, I get very worried. Seriously, if I wake up in the morning and I'm humming Some Enchanted Evening, I take a very close look at what I wrote the night before. Oscar Hammerstein talked to me about Jerome Kern. Jerome Kern was, you know, maybe he was the Schubert of the American musical theater, probably our greatest melodist. And you think, he gets up in the morning and he goes, you are the promised kiss of springtime. And he's just coming out of his head in the shower, just jots it down. Oscar told me about writing that song. He said, I was in one room, writing the lyric, and he hears Jerome Kern go, Jum bum, ba da 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 da, Jum bum, ba da 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 da, Jum bum, ba da 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 da. Jum bum. He tried every single note in the scale until he got the one da 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 da. Now he had to go on da 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 da. And that's how one of the most gorgeous, free-flowing melodies ever written came out. And I thought, boy, that's good news for the rest of us.
One thing about Steve Sondheim, when he likes a song, really likes it, he'll say, no, that's a good song. Then the fact that I don't like it or don't get it, which is not all that infrequent, it's quite frequent that I hear something the first time out and I don't know what I'm listening to, and he doesn't force it on me. But when he says, no, that's a good song, by God it is.
Isn't it rich? Are we a pair? Me here at last on the ground, you in midair. Send in the clowns.
When you sit down to write a show, do you make a conscious effort to write hit songs, or
No. I've had very few hit songs, actually. They generally tend to step out on their own if they're going to become hits. I don't know what makes a hit song. Every writer who's ever had a huge success wrote what he wanted to write, and it hit. Nobody sits and says, okay, now the formula for a show is we'll have a nun and a dog and Abraham Lincoln, and it never works. I want to be able to stand in the back of the house and be proud of what I've seen, not just in terms of my own work, but say, yes, that musical was worth spending 1.5 years of your life on. Most of the biggest hits of the 20s, 30s, and 40s came from shows and movies. Starting in the 50s with the rock revolution, the split, the divergence occurred. And so you could get shows that were huge hits without any hit songs. The fact about Send in the Clowns is that for 2 years after the show opened, when that song was available, only one person was attracted to it, a man named Bobby Short. And then, about 2 years later, both Judy Collins and Frank Sinatra got interested in it, and the artists made the hit. I've often claimed that Hello Dolly might not have been a hit if Louis Armstrong hadn't picked it up. Often it is the artist, meaning in the English sense, the singer, who makes the song a hit.
Was that a surprise to you that that became a hit?
Absolutely flabbergasting. It's my only really big hit song, and it was designed as a little throwaway song for a touching moment for Desiree. There's, as you probably know, a tradition in show business that some of the best songs and some of the most popular ones were written out of town while the show was trying out of town. And everybody says, isn't it remarkable what pressure will do to a writer, how it'll make you write so well when you only have a few days in Boston or in Philadelphia to write. Well, the truth is, it's not the pressure, it's the fact that you see the cast and you know who you're writing for. I wrote Send in the Clowns for Glynis Johns, who was the star of Little Night Music. She did not have a song in the second act, and Hal Prince, the director, felt that she should. There was one big scene between her and the leading man. And I always felt it was the leading man's scene, and I was outlining a song for him, and Hal said, let me show you the scene. And he directed the scene in such a way that even though on paper it was Frederick's scene, by the time I saw the scene down at rehearsal, it was Desiree's scene. I went home and wrote the song that night.
At 10 o'clock the next morning, when we started rehearsal, Steve put his hands and played the first chord. And my eyes absolutely brimmed. I was absolutely choked, like I am now. And I looked at Len, who is not an emotional person or doesn't show it, and his eyes were filled up too. We knew the first few chords.
Glynis was not a singer with a capital S. She had a lovely, sweet, bell-like voice, which was breathy and short-winded. And so it's written in short phrases. Isn't it rich? Pause, pause, take your breath. Are we a pair? Pause, pause, take your breath. You know, now she got a sustained line. Da 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 da.
Me here at last on the ground.
Breath. Ya da da da. Pause, pause, breath. So, you know, it's not hard to sing.
Isn't it rich?
Are we a pair?
Me here at last on the ground. You
Mayday,
send in the clouds.
Isn't it bliss?
Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around.
One who can't move. Where are the clouds? Send in the clouds. Just when I start.
Oh, but it does. Finally knowing the one that I wanted was yours.
Making my entrance again with my usual flair. Sure of my lines, no one is there.
Don't you love farce? My fault, I fear. I thought that you'd want what I want. Sorry, my dear. But where are the clowns? There ought to be clowns. Send in the clowns. What a surprise! Who could foresee I'd come to feel about you what you felt about me? Why, only now when I see that you've drifted away. What a surprise. What a cliché. Isn't it rich? Isn't it queer? Losing my timing this late in my career. But where are the clouds? Quick, send in the clouds.
don't bother, they're here.
I've had letters all during the years from people who say they love the song, but they don't know what it means. And in fact, I even remember Frank Sinatra, who, after all, was responsible for making it a hit. He was asked in an article what the lyric meant. He said, I don't know. I don't care what it meant. Look, you meet a girl, you take up with her, you leave the girl, send in the clowns.
Do you call yourself a poet? Do you write poetry apart from your lyrics?
Never. No, and it's a different technique.
Do you think it's a different, you're a different world? Really?
Yes. It's mostly because...
You do write poetry, you call them lyrics, but so what?
No, you see, I think they're poetic lyrics. It's not a question, and that's not modesty in any way. It's a description. Poetry seems to me to exist in terms of its conciseness. How much can be packed in? Lyric writing has to exist in time. The audience, the listener, cannot do what the reader of poetry does. He cannot go at his own speed. He cannot go back over the sentence. Therefore, it must be crystal clear as it goes on. That means you have to underwrite. You have to lay the sentences out so there's enough air for the ear to take them in. Also, what has to be considered, and what not enough people who write dense lyrics consider, is that there's a great deal going on besides the lyric. There's music, there's costumes, there's lighting. There's a lot of things to listen to and look at. And therefore, the lyric must be, in that sense, simple. It can be full of complex thoughts, and it certainly can have resonance. But it must be easy to follow. That is not true of poetry. Poetry need not, and probably often should not, be easy to follow. Oh, what a beautiful morning is a line I'd be ashamed to put on paper. But once you hear it with Rogers' melodic line, it couldn't be better. That's known as poetic.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way.
Hammerstein's most famous opening number is Oh, What a Beautiful Morning, which was a startling number when he wrote it because most shows, in fact, probably all of them, opened with chorus numbers. And here came a lonely cowboy, came strolling onto the stage and started to sing a cappella, and then the orchestra joined in, and right away the audience knew they were in for something odd. And therefore it prepared them for the rest of the evening.
People do not understand that Oscar was an experimental playwright, that I think his major contribution to the theater is not the songs, but the playwriting. And you could say, oh, but those plays are so naive, those characters are so naive. But think of the theatrical imagination going on with them. My entire generation, you know, Bach and Harnick and Kander and Ebb, our entire generation of songwriters is based on what Oscar encouraged us to do.
Well, he really literally taught me everything I know, and mostly in one afternoon. When I was 15 years old, I'd written a show for school.
I asked him to judge it as if he would judge a professional show, because I was so sure it was so wonderful.
He said, in that case, it's the worst thing I ever read. I was terribly upset because I thought I was going to be the first 15-year-old to have a show on Broadway, you know.
He really did say the worst thing I have ever read.
Worst sounds cruel, and he was not cruel that way. But he made it very clear that if I were going to ask for professional standards, he was going to treat me like a professional. But he did say, he said, it isn't that it's untalented. I think you're talented, but I'll tell you where it's wrong.
And he then went through the show, word by word, all the songs, all the dialogue, to show me where everything was terrible. And I picked up from that afternoon a couple of principles, which I'm perfectly happy to pass on.
Please do.
Such as that a song should be like a play. It should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It should have an idea, state the idea, and then build the idea and develop it and finish. And at the end, you should be at a place different from where you began.
I probably learned more about writing in that afternoon than I've learned the rest of my life. It was all just force-fed to me as if I was a Strasbourg goose. It was just crammed into me, and I've never forgotten it. I can repeat everything he said that afternoon, and everything he said incidentally was true. He did not say a single thing that I disagree with. My style is entirely different than his, because one of the things he told me to do was not to imitate him. If you write what you feel, it'll come out true. If you write what I feel, it'll come out false. And of course, he was right. Write for yourself. And he said, if you do, you'll be 90% ahead of everybody else. And of course, the minute he put it into those competitive terms, I zoomed away from him and never wrote like him again. If I didn't take what he gave us and further it, there would be no point. All of us have done that, and others will do that after us, I hope.
But the whole point is to further things, to take what you've gotten and make more and go in different directions, but always based on what he was telling us. You can't learn in a classroom and you can't learn on paper. You can only learn by writing and doing and writing and doing. As a friend of mine says, write something, put it on, write something, put it on, write something. Well, you can't always put it on, but that's the only way to do it. That's how everybody who's ever been good got good.
Hasn't much that's plus. You might describe him thus: a false alarm, a broken arm, an imitation Hitler and with littler charm. But oh, can that boy foxtrot? His mouth is mean, he's not too clean. What makes him look reptilian is the brilliantine. But oh, can that boy foxtrot?
We were in Boston with Follies, and we were having a problem with a song called Can That Boy Foxtrot, which had originally been written as a throwaway song for a minor character. But Hal Prince, the director, had cast Yvonne DiCarlo, who was a movie star. She was a name in the cast. So whatever number she sang had to land. It didn't necessarily have to stop the show, but you had to feel that it was worthwhile her being in the cast for her to have sung this number to you.
What was the song that went out?
It was called Oh Boy, Can That Boy Foxtrot?
That was the joke. And you do that once, it's funny. You do that twice, it's all right. You do that 8 times, I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it. The number was just sort of a filler. It didn't really relate to the emotions or the story of the evening, and it was just a number for a movie star. So we knew that we could improve it if I could find a way of replacing it. And I couldn't think of a song to write for her. And we were sitting around a table, James Goldman and Michael Bennett and Hal Prince, the directors, and I. And James said, you know, it probably should be, you know, a song of surviving. I mean, you know, I'm still here. And I said, that's it, thank you very much. And just that single phrase then suggested the whole song and this whole history of her life.
I've slept in shanties, guest off the WPA, and I'm here, danced in my scanties, $3 a night was the pay, and I'm here. I've stood on bread lines with the best, watched while the headlines did the rest. In the Depression was I depressed? Nowhere near. I met a big financier, and I'm here.
So I thought, I'll write something of substance. I thought about, all right, this lady is an ex-movie star who's now in TV, and being a movie buff, I thought, I know, I'll base it on Joan Crawford and her career. She started as a silent film star, and she became a sound star, and then she eventually became, you know, superannuated and started to do camp movies where she was a hatchet murderer, and, you know, she did Baby Jane, all that sort of stuff. She became a joke on and of herself, but she survived. She survived what everyone thinks. I thought, that's who this lady is. And so I took Joan Crawford's career and the history of the United States through, well, because she went through all those things. She went through Beebe's Bathurst. She went through the king's abdication. She lived through all those era things. At the same time, she lived through what happened in Hollywood. She lived through the drug era in Hollywood. She lived through the communist scare in Hollywood. I thought, put all that together, you know, there's at least a song of substance, so it doesn't have one childish joke on the word foxtrot. And, you know, and at least, so if it doesn't stop the show, fine. But the audience will know that they've been served a meal and not an hors d'oeuvre.
Good times and bad times, I've seen them all, my dear. I'm still here. Plush velvet sometimes just pretzels and beer. But I'm here. I've stuffed the dailies in my shoes. I have strummed ukuleles, sung the blues. I've watched my dreams disappear. But I'm still here. I've been through Reno, I've been through Beverly Hills. Now I'm here. Reefers and vino, rescue, religion and pills. And I'm here. I've been called a pinko, commie tool, but I got through it, stinko, by my pool. I should have been to an acting school. That seems clear. Still, someone said,
You're sincere.
so I'm here. I've gotten through Herbert and J. Edgar Hoover. Wow, I was fun enough. When you've been through Herbert and J. Edgar Hoover, well, anything else is a laugh. Black Sable one day, the next day it goes into hock. But I'm here. Top billing Monday, Tuesday you're touring in stock. But I'm here. Oh, first you're another slow-eyed vamp and someone's mother. Ooh, and then you camp. And then you career, from career to career. And I'm almost through my memoirs. And you know that I'm here. I've gotten through, hey lady, aren't you Hoosiers? Ooh, what a looker you were. Or better yet, lady, sorry, I thought you were Hoosiers. Well, whatever happened to her? Good times and bum times, I've seen them all. And my dear, I'm still here. Plush velvet sometimes just pretzels and beer. But I'm here. Well, I'm from the gamut, A to Z. 3 cheers and damn it, c'est la vie. Well, I even got through all of last year. And I'm here. Look who's here. I'm still here. Yeah, 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 yeah. You better believe it. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here.
I think because Follies was such a cult show, and there's been so much written about it, the fact that it did not pay off was something of a scandal. To hear it spoken of, it was this great disaster economically. The reason for that is that everyone thought it was a success until it closed one day, and then they suddenly realized, my God, it never was a success.
One of the advantages of having a collaborator is you're never slammed in the face alone. Even if you get the bad reviews, it's still, you're in a boat with somebody. I had 3 successes my first 3 times out. They were not personal successes. I got terrible reviews or completely ignored. But they were successes. I was making a living. I could afford to write another show. Anyone Can Whistle, which came next, when I saw that it was going to be a failure, I thought I'd be devastated, and I wasn't. I was disappointed that more of my friends wouldn't get a chance to see the show. And that's really the extent of it. You know, it wasn't sort of resilience and chin up. It was, you know, I like writing songs. I like writing shows. And, you know, if that had been my first show, I'm not sure it would have bounced back. But then I experienced a real failure when I did Do I Hear a Waltz, which Arthur Lawrence was based on a play by Arthur called Time of the Cuckoo. I thought by adapting Time of the Cuckoo as a musical with Arthur doing the book, I liked writing with Arthur.
I would be doing Arthur a favor, and I would also be paying off my unspoken promise to Oscar to write a show with Dick Rogers. We thought, well, this will be an easy job and we'll make a quick buck. Those are all reasons never to write a musical.
Do I hear a waltz? I want more than to hear a waltz. I want you to share it, cause, oh boy, do I hear a waltz.
It was a respectable show. It was not lambasted by the critics. It was very politely received, and politely received by the audience, and had no passion and no blood and no reason to be. And I learned from that, the only reason to write is from love. You must not write because you think it's going to be a hit, because it's expedient or anything like that. It's so difficult to write. It's so difficult to put on a show. You better, if you have the privilege of being able to write it, you write it out of passion. That's what failure taught me. And that was the real failure.
When I met you, you were pretty down in the dumps after Merrily We Roll Along. You were even talking about, maybe trying to do something else.
Yes, it was personal. I really felt, paranoid or not, and I think Al did too, that everybody in, as we say, the business, really wanted us to fail. They were glad that the show, and I thought, I can't work in this hostile atmosphere. I really, because you do have to go out there in public, and I'm a Broadway baby, Luckily, I discovered the joys of off-Broadway, and that's what revived me. When we wrote Sunday in the Park with George, we didn't know it was going to go to Broadway, and that was fun. It was Mickey and Judy putting on a show. I'm sure I would have eventually gotten back to songwriting anyway, because there's nothing else I could do. But that's what did it.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Door chimes, in comes company. No strings, good times, just chums company. Late nights, quick fights, party games, deep talks, long walks, telephone calls. Thoughts, shared souls, read private names, all those photos up on the wall.
Company is a show about marriage, and the difficulties of marriage and the joys of marriage. And I had never been married, either officially or unofficially, when I wrote Company. I thought, how am I going to write about something I know nothing about? I've observed marriages, and I have feelings and opinions and insights, but I don't know anything about it. So I called my good friend Mary Rogers, who was on her second marriage, and very happily on her second marriage. And I said, tell me about marriage. And she spent an evening with me, and she told me about marriage, about her marriages, and about her observations on marriage. And I took a yellow pad out, and I took notes, exactly as if it were a lecture. And Company is a result of that evening.
It's the little things you do together, that make perfect relationships. The hobbies you pursue together, savings you accrue together, looks you misconstrue together, that make marriage a joy. Kiss, kiss.
The reviews in Boston were, to put it mildly, mixed. One of the reviewers loved the show, and he loved it because he said it was anti-marriage, which of course it isn't. So we had the ironic reaction of reading a rave review by a guy who didn't understand the piece at all. The review in Variety was one of the most scathing I've ever encountered. The reviewer said it was a show strictly for homos and old ladies. And I think he went on from there.
Being alive, take one.
Someone to hold you too close.
You're very good, and I don't want to spoil something that's potentially marvelous, and I need more guitar. Let's hear a guitar.
Now, this is the first time I really like to feel rhythmic looseness. What you do right here. That's the explosion. That's the flower bursting. And that's where you can take rhythmic liberties. And just what you're doing. It's fine. That's nice and free.
Well, maybe there's one more in me. Let's find out, huh?
You don't practically swallow the mic on the end.
Okay, I'll stay on.
Also, we're gonna slow up the tempo a bit.
Someone to hold you too close, someone to hurt you too deep, someone to sit in your chair, to ruin your sleep.
That's true, but there's more than that.
Is that all you think there is to it?
You've got so many reasons for not being with someone, but Robert, you haven't one good reason for being alone.
Come on, you're onto something, Bobby. You're onto something.
Someone to need you too much, someone to know you too well, someone to pull you up short, to put you through hell.
You see what you look for, you know.
You're not a kid anymore, Robbie. I don't think you'll ever be a kid again, kiddo.
Hey, buddy, don't be afraid that it won't be perfect. The only thing to be afraid of really is that it won't be.
Don't stop now. Keep going.
Someone you have to let in, someone whose feelings you spare, someone who, like it or not, will want you to share a little, a lot.
And what does all that mean?
Robert, how do you know so much about it when you've never been there? It's much better living it than looking at it, Robert. Add 'em up, Bobby. Add 'em up.
Someone to crown you with love, someone to force you to care, someone to make you come through, who'll always be there, as frightened as you of being alive. Being alive. Being alive. Being alive.
Blow out the candles, Robert, and make a wish. Want something. Want something.
Somebody hold me too close, somebody hurt me too deep, somebody sit in my chair and ruin my sleep and make me aware of being alive, being alive. Somebody need me too much, somebody know me too well, somebody pull me up short, put me through hell, give me support for being alive, make me alive, make me alive, make me confused, mark me with praise, let me be used, vary my days, but alone is alone, not alive. Somebody crown me with love, somebody push me to care, somebody make me come through, I'll always be there, as frightened as you, to help us survive, being alive, being
My first serious relationship occurred when I was 60 years old, and I fell in love. And I think it didn't happen till then because I wasn't open for it. I wasn't ready for it. I was brought up as an only child. I enjoyed being an only child. I enjoyed being alone. I still enjoy often being alone. But I think I'd gotten in the habit of it. And when I met somebody, the habit got broken. Oh, that's the forum. Oh, well, yes. A funny thing happened on the way here. But I can't talk about it.
Between my freshman and sophomore years in college, I had discovered that I had a lot of trouble with my mother and getting along with her, and she didn't really want a child, but she was very, very much in love, I think, with my father, and even obsessed with him. So when he left her, which he did for another woman, the wrath of God had nothing on her, and she unfortunately tried to make me pay for the sins of my father, and so. It was not a very good relationship. And if it hadn't been for the Hammersteins, I really don't know where I would be, if I'd even be alive.
A lot of Sondheim's themes come from having had his own expectations bruised as a young man when his parents divorced and he got trapped in the middle of bitter resentments that never subsided even as he grew older. He recalls a letter his mother wrote to him when he was in his 40s, and she was entering a hospital to have a pacemaker implanted.
And so she wrote me a letter and had it hand-delivered the night before she went into the hospital. And she's opening sentence was, before I undergo open heart surgery, which she had underlined 3 times, I just wanted to tell you that I have only one regret in my life, which is giving you birth. And when I got this note, and then she went on, I thought, I was stunned first, and then I thought, oh my God. I'd always thought all those years that, like so many parent-child relationships, it was misplaced or misguided love. And it was all, about my father, and she didn't know where to place her female. Then I realized she never wanted me on Earth. I was an inconvenience.
Do you want children?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have any. Yeah. I am. But art is the other way of having children, teaching. I believe that very firmly.
The idea of teaching a child everything, from colors to clouds to music, it's teaching in the sense of opening up the mind, not teaching, opening up the mind, which is what education is about. All education is just about making people curious. That's all it's about. And to get a child to be curious about everything would be an unbearable thrill for me, or a bearable thrill.
These are my friends, see how they glisten. See this one shine, how he smiles in the light. My friend, my faithful friend.
Remember, this is a love song. It's in fact the big ballad of the show. Is his love for his razors. So let's start it as a genuinely passionate, intense, semi-whispered ballad that keeps rising and falling. Intense, sexual ballad. And let's start again from that point of view. And let's not take any rubato. Let's keep it absolutely rigid to start with. Ja, da, da, da. Ja, so it has a trance-like quality. The reason that I wrote this rhythmically so squarely is because he's falling into a state of almost of self-hypnosis. So it must have that feeling, as opposed to conversation. The songs we've been working on so far this afternoon are all about conversation. This is exactly the reverse. This is non-conversational. This is a ritual. I love teaching, and I've always thought that all art is a form of teaching. I think painting is a form of teaching. It's any kind of communication is a form of teaching. And an artist, a visual artist, shows us ways of looking at the world. And a novelist shows us ways that people behave. A composer teaches us ways to listen.
Is there any conscious decision to impart some information in songs, some information spoken?
Entirely conscious. I think people do not think carefully enough about what to sing and what not to sing. There's a tendency either to sing everything or merely to sing songs and speak. And I think there are certain shows that call for one technique or another, but the choice of what to sing and what not to sing is, first of all, it's delicate, it's difficult, but there are choices that must be made consciously. But one of the things you will discover, I hope, is that as your material goes to actors and actresses, you suddenly find yourself in the embarrassing position of having to defend what you've written. Because an actor will come to you and say, now, what did you mean by this line? And you can't say, oh, well, when I mean, it's you know. You've got to tell them exactly what it means. You must be able to defend every single word and note.
Well, the characters in Merrily, when you first meet them, they're sort of at their most jaded and kind of most unlikable. What did you want the audience to take away from moving backwards and seeing these characters go from kind of their worst to their most innocent?
It's a cautionary tale. It's what can happen to you. It's how ideals can get. It's a show about expedience. It's about, you got to be very careful if you're going to take the expedient path. All they care about is getting their work done and having it heard. It is three idealists whose idealism is one of the things that binds them. The thing about opening doors is it catches the whole zeitgeist, the whole thing of getting excited when you're young writers and you're knocking on producers' doors and every moment is a crisis and everything requires a phone call and everything is at a level of hysteria and until you finally get to the producer's office and then it's all a disaster.
Let me call you back.
This is just a draft.
Right.
Probably it stinks.
Right.
Haven't had the time to do a polish.
Will you sing?
Right. Who wants to live in New York? Who wants the worry, the noise, the dirt, the heat? Who wants the garbage cans clanging in the streets? Suddenly I do. They're always popping their cork. I'll fix that line. The cops, the cabbies, the sales girls up at Saks. You gotta have a real taste for maniacs. Suddenly I do.
That's great. That's swell. The other stuff as well. It isn't every day I hear a score this strong. But fellas, if I may, there's only one thing wrong. There's not a tune you can hum. There's not a tune you go bum, bum, bum-de-dum. You need a tune to go bum, bum, bum-de-dum. Give me some melody. Why can't you throw 'em a crumb? What's wrong with letting them tap their toes a bit? I'll let you know when Stravinsky has a hit. Give me some melody. Oh, sure, I know it's not that kind of show. But can't you have a score that's sort of in between? But play a little more, I'll show you what I mean.
Who wants to live in New York? I always hated the dirt, the heat, the noise. But ever since I met you,
Listen, boys, maybe it's me. But that's just not a hummable melody. Write more, work hard, leave your name with the girl. Less avant-garde, leave your name with the girl. Just write a plain old melody. D-D-D-D-D-D.
They're stopping rehearsals. They ran out of money.
We last did one issue, my book was rejected.
The nightclub is raided, I have to start coaching.
My parents are coming.
Screwed up the laundry.
My wallet was stolen.
I saw the musician.
We're being evicted.
I'm having a breakdown.
We'll all get together on Sunday. They're slamming the doors, singing, go away. It's less of a sail than a climb. That faraway shores, farther every day. We're learning to ricochet. We still have a lot to say. You know what we'll do? We'll do a review.
What?
We'll do a review of our own.
Who wants to live in New York? Who wants the worry, the noise, the dirt, the heat? Who wants the garbage can sling? I can see higher.
Thank you. We're looking for someone with a little more experience. Next.
They're always popping their cork.
Up a tone.
The cops, the cabbies, the sales girls up at Saks. You gotta have a real taste for maniacs.
Thank you. You're hired.
I'm Beth.
I'm Frank.
I really thought I sang. I'm Mary.
Charlie.
By the way, I'm told we open Saturday.
What? You're not serious?
is...
Nobody's ready.
Apparently somebody canceled a booking.
The songs aren't finished.
And what about costumes?
And how do I learn all these numbers?
I'll bring you the copies
Not to
of
mention I
everything
still
later
haven't
this
finished
evening.
the Synonym song or the Kennedy number. And what do we do about getting publicity? Rush around town putting stickers on windows. We'll worry about it on Sunday. We're opening doors, singing, here we are. We're filling up days on a dime. The faraway shores, looking not too far. We're following every star. There's not enough time. We're banging on doors, shouting, here again. We're risking it all on a dime. The faraway shores, looking here again. The only thing left is when we know we should count to 10. We haven't got time. We haven't got time.
You are so admired not just for what you've made, but also for how you've been to people, that you've been generous about teaching, that you've been honest, and that you have tried to be as helpful as you can be. When you try to approach your work as all that you've done and all that people expect from you, overwhelming?
Well, the expectations come from the work, not from the teaching. Teaching to me is the sacred profession, and I cry when I talk about it. I'll probably cry now. But my life was saved by teachers. First a Latin teacher in high school, and then Oscar Hammerstein, who was a teacher, and who just before he died, gave me a portrait of himself, and I asked him to inscribe it, which is weird when you think that, you know, it's like asking your father to inscribe something. And he wrote, I'm gonna cry. He wrote, for Stevie, my friend and teacher. And that describes Oscar better than any other way I can describe him. He understood that, as you know in King and I, he said, by your pupils you are taught. So teaching to me it's a necessity. I couldn't live without it.
If you could conjure up Oscar Hammerstein right now, what would you say to him about your career having sprung from him in so many ways?
I would say, aren't you proud of me? When I write now, I'm aware that the people who like my work are expecting so much, and it makes me tense.
You've got to top yourself?
It's not so much that you have to top yourself, it's that you want to write something fresh. You want to write something you haven't written before.
So it's an act of courage, in a sense, to...
It sure is, and it needs more courage, I think, as you get older. And that's what I didn't expect.
I suppose if there's one that's closest to my heart, it would probably be Sunday in the Park with George, because of the ambitiousness of what it's trying to say. James Lapine and I were talking about a play that James had directed, which had utilized this particular painting Sunday afternoon. And we started talking about the painting and the fact that nobody in the painting is looking at anybody else, and yet there are 50 people in the painting. So why aren't they looking at each other? Are they hiding from each other? Are they in the park for devious reasons? Then James said, the main character is missing. And I said, who? Picking up my cue. And he said, the painter. And once he said that, we knew we had a show.
It's like a photographer went out on the island, the Grand Jatte, and took a picture of a lot of people strolling in the park. The humanity of it. I thought, these people don't know they're going to be immortal. And so I'm going to write a song about that. That it's going to be outside of themselves. They're going to be singing about themselves and what they're doing. But they're going to be acknowledging that they are immortal. And it all leads to the word forever, which is, when I wrote that word, I cried, because I thought, that's what it's about. And I then decided that I would do it all in one sentence. It's a lyric that's in one sentence. Because there is a kind of, I don't know how to put it. It's like, it's eternal, it's infinite, it's whatever. It's what I feel about art. It just has no beginning and no end. It's just one thing. Then I could see that they would all be singing that one idea. That here we are in a park, and we're going to be here forever. That's why it has that, you know, it's got an almost funerary beat to it, you know. It's almost a funeral march, but it isn't quite. It's a triumphant march.
Made of flecks of light and dark and parasol. Bum 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 bum. People strolling through the
White, a blank page or canvas, his favorite. So many possibilities.
To be on some marquee, all twinkling lights, a spark to pierce the dark, from Union Park to Washington Heights. Someday maybe all my dreams will be repaid. Hell, I'd even play them what I got, plus a tube of grease paint and a follow spot. I'm a Broadway baby, slaving at a 5 and 10, dreaming of the great day when I'll be in a show. Broadway baby, making rounds all afternoon, eating at a greasy spoon to save on my dough. Oh, at my tiny flat, there's just my cat, a bed and a chair. Still, I'll stick it till I'm on a bill all over Times Square. Someday, maybe, if I stick it long enough, I can get to strut my stuff.